Welcome to day 2 of Z Memories, with an Alicesoft entry that most likely isn't one of the first you think of when hearing of this company's name. Today's look back will be on Galzoo Island, a Japanese-only, simple but solid dungeon crawler. Galzoo Island was made right after Alicesoft created Rant 6, but before Sengoku Rants. As for why it is part of Z Memories, well, it's not because this is a Japanese teaching game or anything, but rather simply because it is the first Japanese visual novel I had ever played after teaching myself Japanese. So here's the backstory. After I first got into PC visual novels through Tsukihime, I read a couple of the ones translated at the time, like Fate Stay Night, Cross Channel, and so on. I then came to the realization, like perhaps many of you had, that there really weren't that many visual novels translated, and many of the ones I wanted to play were only in Japanese. There were barely any out on the international market, and all the official translation companies like Jast, Manga Gamer, and Hirameki International, G Collections, were all translating some pretty hot garbage or exceedingly mediocre titles, like Private Nurse, Cosplay Fetish Academy, Yojimbo, Lightning Warrior Raidi. You get my point. Really, the fan translators were the ones who first translated stuff like Sengoku Rants, Fate Stay Night, Tsukihime, Cross Channel, Yuno, and so on. Sure, the fan translations weren't perfect, but they were really good, and to be perfectly frank, some of them were even better than the official translations at times. These fan translators who translated for the sole purpose of getting others to play the game were the real heroes who really brought international interest to this niche market of games. Nowadays, there's actually a very real possibility that some of the most popular visual novels might actually make it to international side. Senra Banka and Baldur's Sky are now officially translated as of this moment, and that's absolutely wild to think about. But a decade back, either you knew Japanese or you prayed to the high heavens that some amazing fan will work on a translation out of the goodness of their heart. Anyways, enough of that, back to my story. I decided after seeing how there were so many visual novels I wanted to play that screw it, I'll just learn it myself. So after a few months of making myself memorize hiragana, katakana, some basic kanji, and a load of grammar rules, I decided to just jump right into a visual novel head first. My first choice is an upcoming title in Z Memories, but after getting a second opinion, Galzoo Island became the first Japanese one I actually completed. Galzoo Island was a great choice for a multitude of reasons. First reason, it was a visual novel game hybrid. So while there was a good amount of text still, gameplay broke up having to continuously read and learn new words. Another great thing was that the Japanese in Galzoo Island is pretty easy to read as a whole. Each text box has a maximum of like 3 lines, and the words used were really simple. And the story was straightforward enough that it was very easy to follow as well. Years later, I would take some formal Japanese classes to brush up on my speaking and grammar rules, but for the most part, the Japanese I used to read back then is pretty much the same I used to read Japanese visual novels now. Cause to be honest, a lot of the words and kanji used in visual novels you probably won't see in class, like Mahosukai, magic user, Mazuku, demons, Kyuseishu, savior, and so on. Moving back to Galzoo Island itself, in classic Alicesoft fashion, Galzoo Island is a simple, but definitely fun dungeon crawler. I wouldn't be surprised if they just ported the exact same engine they used from Rant 6, as that was a dungeon crawler they made just a year before. The story follows Leo, an aspiring monster tamer who just can't seem to master taming. A meeting with Kuzushi and Captain Vanilla, 2 monster girls, has him participating in a rebellion against the evil Squid Baron who has captured all the monster girls on the island in search of a wife. Play as Leo as he tames all the monster girls and leads them to victory against the Squid Baron. If that plot sounds outstandingly simple, it's only because it really is. Galzoo Island is a really cute looking game, and is every bit as bright and happy as it looks. There are a ton of different monster gals, all with different abilities, attacks to level up and improve as you try to mix and match the perfect team. While there are a ton of different characters to use, the game pretty much makes you use all of them at least once, giving you a good chance to try all of them out. Some monsters might be really good at fighting, some might be good at healing, some might be good at traversing through dungeon traps, all that sort of thing. Also, in classic Alicesoft fashion, gameplay is a major part of Galzoo Island, in the sense that it ain't no cakewalk. You will most definitely run into situations where you'll be forced to retreat, lest you lose all the progress you have made, and going through dungeons will definitely take more than one trip. Traps, battles, story events, these will all force you to reassess your team and figure out who needs to be subbed out and who needs to be put in. You'll come into many situations where you have to weigh whether you want to backtrack again, or whether you want to risk perhaps dying and just straight up losing all the progress you have made. While the story itself is pretty simple, Galzoo Island manages to have some good moments here and there that did get a chuckle out of me. Of course, with any game with tons of playable characters, there isn't too much character development outside of the main two, you know, Captain Vanilla and Kuzushi. That said, each character actually has quite a few friendship events that are unique to themselves. Far more than the average Fire Emblem game anyhow. Another fact I might as well explain, since if I don't explain it, it might scare away some people. A part of the game is boning monster girls, where they then turn into an egg and are reborn in a younger form. The younger forms have no scenes, so all of you can breathe a sigh of relief. The younger forms of the monster girls are much weaker than their grown counterparts and take some time to grow back to their normal forms. It is an interesting mechanic, balancing having a team of stronger and weaker monster gals. This, combined with status effects that occur from overusing a single character too much, forces you to have a relatively diverse team outside of the 8 you can take to dungeons at all times. This also comes into play with the running time limit you have to get through each island, as the general idea is that you have to get through the monster gals before the Squid Baron can decide on a wife for his coronation, and later, the time limit for getting the best ending or not. The general gameplay loop of Galzoo Island is exploring a new part of the island, running to events that lead you to meet new monster gals, getting blockaded by someone or something that requires a specific monster gal to proceed, taming them, and then progressing further. It's simple, but it does work and gives you a very good idea of what to aim for with each new area. There is also a pretty good balance between the monster gals, as I end up using some of my favorites for a couple areas past where I got them. I wish I had something to compliment about Leo himself, the protagonist, but he's just kind of like this shy, innocent Shota, and that doesn't really appeal to me like some of the other visual novel protagonists I've seen, although he definitely is a step up from some faceless player character that most visual novels like to use. What's also interesting about Galzoo Island, oh I know, it's also one of the only Alicesoft games to actually focus on the monster gals as playable characters. Monster gals have been a staple of Alicesoft games since the first Rance game, and I'm pretty sure even before that in like maybe Little Princess or something. But this is probably the only time I can remember where there are actually characters with actual dialogue, romance scenes, characterization, all that stuff, as opposed to just being normal EXP and CG fodder like they are in other games. Normally I'd have a spoiler section here, but the game is so simple that there really ain't much for me to spoil. If you know how to read Japanese already, or heck, if you were like me and trying to practice it, give Galzoo Island a try. Of course, this is with the pretext that playing a dungeon crawler sounds like a fun idea to you. As far as the genre goes, Galzoo Island is probably one of the easier ones to jump into. It's also got a ton of cute anime girls, so I mean, that's always a plus, right? And with that, day 2 of Z Memories is done. As always, the like button is there if you enjoy the content. Twitter handle will be on the center of the end screen in case you want to @ me or see what I post in between videos. And subscribe if you want to get notified when the next Z Memories is coming out, which will be one quite a bit different than what I usually talk about, but I'm sure all of you have played or at least heard of it. Thanks for sticking around. If you missed day 1 of Z Memories Tsukihime, link will be on top, and on the bottom will be something just as interesting. See you in a few days.